Hi everyone, welcome to Project MIS. My name is Sumit Kumar Ambastha, and in today's video we are going to talk about user story and acceptance criteria. So as we all know that user story is very helpful for developers if it is written properly so that developers can understand that what is the expectation from the user story for a given set of users who has written the user story. And then at the same time, if acceptance criteria is defined well, then it helps to understand how the story will be considered as a complete. So these two have very important role while defining the requirement. So let's understand and deep dive into it. User story. So by the definition, if we go, how it is defined, user stories are a fundamental tool that helps software development team understand and meet the needs of their users. User is important keyword here, resulting in more effective and user focused software development. So that's how we explain what is user story. And in terms of pure definition, user stories are concise description of a software feature told from the perspective of an end user. So when we say from the perspective of an end user, it means we are thinking from one particular user's point of view and writing the user story as a customer, as an admin, as a business user, as a developer, like that. So who who has that vision? Based on that, the user story is written. The one example is written here, like as a customer. So who is explaining the requirement? Customer is explaining the requirement. So as a customer, I want to be able to reset my password. The customer wants to reset the password. And what will happen when customer wants to reset the password? So that I can regain access to my account. So that is the ideal approach to write the user story. We have to define the role and then what we want as a function to be done and then what is the benefit we are going to get out of it. So this format will help to write the description in a better way. At the same time, it also helps developer to understand the value coming out of it. So let's see some more detail about user story and the structure of it. So user story has a format which we can also call as a components. So what are the components? So role, which is like who is writing the user story or considering whose perspective we are writing the user story, and then what is the action we are taking and what is the benefit we are getting. So role as a user, as a customer. Action, I want to reset my password, I want to open a file, I want to print a file, I want to delete a record, like that. And benefit, so what is the benefit we are getting out of it? If I'm resetting the password, then I should be able to get email with the new link or new password so that I can log in again. If I want to delete the record, so that that record should not be visible to me if I see that the list of records again. So we have to also explain the action and also the benefit coming out of it. One example is given here as a product manager. So who is expressing their view? Product manager. So as a product manager, I want to view the latest sales data. So product manager wants to see the latest sales data so that I can make data driven decision. So whatever is the data requirement for the product manager or product manager, that requirement should be there part of the story so that developer can understand that what is the meaning of sales data, what all fields should be there, and if there any filter or something needs to be applied. So those details should be part of the user story, and based on that, he can make the data driven decision. So that's in plain, that's a user story. If you are not following this format, then also the requirement will be there and developer will be working, but there will be some confusion, some struggle. But if you are following the proper methodology to write the user story in the specific format, then it will help to those people also who are capturing the requirement At the same time, it will also help to those people who are actually working on the development. Now let's move to the next one. Next topic is about invest. So this is a best practices to write a user story. Best practices means, so this is invest is a acronym word, and each letter represent one specific trait which needs to be followed when we are writing the user story. So normally you don't consider these points when you are writing the user story, but you need to ensure these features are there part of the user story. So if these all criteria are met, then it means you have written a good user story, and it will fulfill the deliverable what is expected from user story in the agile methodology. So first is independent. User stories should be self-contained and not depend on others. So it should be self-contained. So whatever information is given in the user story, that should be good enough to perform the task. If you have some specific activity in the user story which depends on some other activity, and if possible, so it's always advisable to separate that task with the and merge with some other task where it can be treated as an independent user story. So there should not be uh, story should not be depending on other story. Then negotiable. Whatever is written in the user story, that should be open for negotiation. It means it should not be hard stuff given which cannot be changed. If developers are suggesting something and are having better idea of doing the thing, if during the planning meeting or during the refinement session, if some of the contributor in the meeting has better way of doing approaching that particular task, then that flexibility should be there to accommodate that in the user story. So that's why it is negotiable. It should be open to discussion. Then valuable. Each story should provide some real value which is coming out of the user story. If there is no value coming out of the story, then it will be very tough to understand the need for that story. If a story is there, then definitely that should have certain value, and that should give some weightage towards the increment. Estimable. The story should be estimable. The detail what is required for user story should be good enough, so that based on the information, developers should be clear in their approach, in their work, how much work they have to do. And if they are clear with those information, then they can also estimate the story, that how much time that story needs to complete, whether it's 1 day or few hours or 2 days or whatever it is. But remember, whatever is the maximum estimate for the story should not go beyond the length of the sprint. So it's a user story should always be completed within the sprint. And if you have written a story which is going beyond the length of the sprint, then in that case, it's a trigger to to split the story into smaller parts. Small. The same thing which I just spoke about. The story should be small and should be completed within the sprint cycle. Then testable. When the story will be testable, when we know that what is the value coming out of the story, and at the same time we are also writing the clear acceptance criteria which will help to understand that how we are going to measure whether the story is meeting the required output or not. So acceptance criteria, if written properly, then in that case, those criteria will be used to test the user story, and that will help developers to ensure that the story is completed. So this is the best practices to be followed when you are writing user story. To remember very easily, you have to remember one word, invest, and from each of these letter form from for invest: independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. If your story meets these criteria, then you have written a good user story. Let's move to the next topic. Acceptance criteria. By the name it suggests acceptance criteria. We are having a criteria. Based on that, we are going to decide whether story can be accepted or not. Definition. What is the definition of acceptance criteria? Acceptance criteria are a set of conditions or criteria. So we are defining some conditions or criteria that a product or feature must meet. So whatever condition or criteria we are defining, and we are expecting that the feature which is getting developed should meet that conditions to be considered complete and satisfactory from the perspective of the stakeholder. So whoever perspective has been taken while writing down the story, from that perspective, we have to ensure that story is completed. Like when we say someone's perspective, so as a customer, as a product owner, as an admin, as a viewer, or whatever it is, acceptance criteria are used to define the boundaries of a user story. So when you write a well defined or good acceptance criteria, that means you are defining the boundary. So developers know that whatever is the expectation from the user story is defined in the acceptance criteria, and that will help them to restrict their work and what all things they have to work. Sometimes it will be a trigger for them to work more, and sometimes they will be thinking differently, but while saying the acceptance criteria they will get the clue that they have to stop here. So it defines the boundary for developers, ensuring that everyone involved in the development process understands what is expected and when the work is considered done. So the only expectation is that people who are involved in the development, they understand what is the expectation from the user story, and based on the acceptance criteria, it helps them to understand the expectation, and also they know if these acceptance, all the list of conditions or criterias are met which are given in acceptance criteria, then developers can say, okay, all these conditions are met, it means I can consider this story is completed. So that's how we are defining the boundary. Example. So one example is given. This is the one scenario where we are talking about a user registration case. Okay. So when we are writing the acceptance criteria, we also define the scenario. So these red word given, when, and then. So these are the specific suggested format for acceptance criteria. And when we say given, so it is used to define the scenario under which we are going to perform the testing. When it actually defines, like, when we are going to perform those checks for conditions and criteria. And then is something after this we are adding what is expected. So now, given a new user who has never registered before, so the scenario is one new user is there who is never registered, who has never registered in our system. Okay, so such one user is like that. When the user provides valid registration information and submit the form. So in the registration form, some fields will be there: name, address, phone number, or whatever it is. He fill the details and he submit the form. When you submit the form, then what is expected? Then the system should create a new user account. So a new user account should be created in the system, send a confirmation email. Then the new user should receive a confirmation email that congratulations, your account is created, or something like that. And then on the screen display a success message which says, okay, congratulations, your account is created, like that. So this is the expectation which we are writing by afterward then. So that's the one example of acceptance criteria. Now let's see the structure, the defined structure of acceptance criteria, how we should be writing acceptance criteria. So acceptance criteria format, structure. So what is a structure? It's a given, when, then structure. Okay, when we say first one, given. So this section provides the initial context or preconditions for the scenario. We are defining under which circumstance we are performing this check. When, describe the action or event that triggers the scenario. Okay, and then specifies the expected outcome or result of the scenario. So after then word, we will be writing what is expected and what should be the result of the scenario. So this format makes acceptance criteria clear and testable. So if you are following this particular scenario, then this will be very easy to test the user stories, and it helps to ensure that all parties have a very clear understanding that what is needed. So whether a developer is reading the story and acceptance criteria, or product owner or scrum master or any stakeholder, whoever is reading, so they will understand that what is expected from them. And if they make any changes, then that also will be recorded. So it always helps developers that it is the parameter they are using to ensure that the story is completed. So it's very important in agile methodology to ensure that we are following very clear approach for user story and acceptance criteria writing. One another example for payment process. So payment process example is given a shopping cart with items and a logged in user. So we are giving a one scenario which says we have a shopping cart. In the shopping cart, some items are added. For which user? One user which is already logged in. Okay. When? Now what is the action? The user proceeds to the checkout and enters valid payment detail. So when the cart is there, logged in user is there. Now after that he proceeds to check out the list and enter the payment detail, whether it's card or bank or NEFT or uh, UPI, whatever it is. He proceeds with entering those details. Then what is expected? Then system should process the payment. So the first expectation is that system should process the payment. So payment should be successful. Update the order status to paid. So in your system, after making the payment success, you have to update the order status to as a paid, and then send a payment confirmation email to the user. And then you have to send trigger one email to the user saying that thank you for your payment. Your payment has been received, or whatever is the content. So that's one another example of acceptance criteria. Now what we'll do, I have taken three different scenarios, and by following that particular scenario, I have written a user story and also the acceptance criteria, just to understand in a better way that what is the approach we should be following. Okay, so let's see example one, user story and acceptance criteria, and I have taken this example for e-commerce industry. So user story says, as an online shopper, to whom we are talking about online shopper. As an online shopper, I want to be able to track my orders in real time. So what is the feature online shopper is talking about? Online order tracking. So I can stay updated on the delivery status. So he knows when his order will be delivered. So that is the user story. Now developers have to work for it. But what all work developers are doing, how developers will understand that whether my task is completed or not. So to clarify that particular point, we are also writing acceptance criteria. And acceptance criteria here, if you see, we have one given, but we have two set of when then. So it means we are giving two different set of actions and two different set of outcome expectation. So given I am a registered user and logged into my account. So this is the condition that I am a registered user and I have logged into the account. After that, when I navigate to the order history section, so now I click on order history. So what is the outcome I should be getting? Then I should see a list of my recent order with the following detail. So what all details will be coming in that recent order list? Order number, order date, expected delivery date, and current order status. So this acceptance criteria will help developer to understand that if I click on order history, that is how the output should come. Okay. Then another action we are specifying in the same acceptance criteria. When the scenario remains same, when the registered user is logged into the account. When I click on an order, so now I got the order list. Now I'm talking about clicking on one particular order. Then I should see detailed tracking information, including the shipment, current location on the map, and estimated time of arrival. So whatever is your way of fetching that particular information, you will be following that approach. But developer will understand by reading this that what is the expectation. So that is one example to explain that how we are writing user story and acceptance criteria. Another example from healthcare industry, and the user story says, as a healthcare provider, I want to record and access patient medical history in a secure and organized manner for efficient patient care. So this will be like little confusing when you read this story because it's not very clearly telling you what exactly they have to. It talks about the value, what is expected, what exactly work has to be done by developer. This is not very clear from this. So how we are going to provide more specific boundary for that by writing this acceptance criteria, given I am a registered healthcare provider with proper access privileges. I am a registered healthcare provider and also I have the required access privileges. When I search for a patient by name or unique identifier, so I am searching for a patient by name or his ID or her ID, then I should be able to view the patient's medical history. Then all patient's medical history should be popped up on the screen. And now how what all detail will be there? The previous diagnosis and treatment, allergies, sensitivities, medication, prescriptions and usage, everything. So this will give expectation to the developer that when someone is searching, registered healthcare provider is searching by a patient by his name and or the unique identifier, then this output should come. So that's one. Now in the same given scenario, we are giving another action. When I update a patient medical record, then the system should log the changes, including the date, time, and the healthcare provider who made that update. So if someone is making the change in the given scenario, then the change should reflect. At the same time, log should be generated that who has made the changes, what is the change, when the change is done, date, time, etc. So this is the acceptance criteria for this particular story. Okay, now let's take a look on the third user story. Education industry. So here we are writing a story from the perspective of a student. As a student, I want an online learning platform that offers interactive quizzes to reinforce my understanding of course material. It's very clearly written. Now, the acceptance criteria says, given I am a registered student in a course. So, the scenario is talking about you are in the website or application where you are registered user and you have logged in as a registered user and you are in the course, any specific course. When I access a lesson. So now a student is accessing a lesson, and when the student is accessing the lesson, then a student should see the interactive quizzes and related to that particular lesson content. So that is the expectation for the user, for the developer. Now then the second condition, second action. When I complete a quiz, the first was when he access the lesson, then during the lesson assessing, he should see the quizzes. Now when a student complete the quiz, then the system should provide immediate feedback on my performance. So whatever how much was your score, how much questions you entered, how much you marked wrong, right, everything. And those scores and correct answer will be populated on the screen. So that is another in the same scenario, second action. Now in the same scenario, we are also using third scenario, third action. I score below a predefined threshold. So for given particular quiz, a threshold is also defined. Suppose it should be less than 70, sorry, it should be above 70 or it should be above 80 or whatever is the threshold. So if suppose threshold is 80 in this particular case, and if my score is less than 80, then I should be able to retake the quiz to improve my understanding. So if my score is above 80, it should be accepted. But if my score is less than 80, then system will pop up a message that if I want to retake the quiz so that I can improve my understanding about the topic. So that's how. So we are giving one scenario by writing the word given, and then when then three times, giving different action and different expectation on each of those actions when user is taking. So that's how when we are writing the detailed acceptance criteria. So in one scenario, we can write like several actions and several expectation. When then, so many when then. There is no limit. It should be only one, two, three, or four, five. It can be 10 also. It can be two also. And for one set of user story, there can be possibility that you may have two different scenario also. So your acceptance criteria will become longer, but more you can think of and writing the clear acceptance criteria, more it will be helpful for you to accept that uh, story in future as a completed one. Otherwise, you will be having so many doubts, questions, and you will keep working with the developer. So that's the significance of it. Now, one disclaimer I want to mention here: the story what we have used here in these three examples are very very high level stories which are written. Normally, if you read the story also provide more details, but to emphasize the understanding about the acceptance criteria, I have written the user story in a very basic way so that we can understand, even though the stories are written in a basic way, simple way, and if you are writing the acceptance criteria in the more accurate way, then also it solves the purpose and it sets the expectation for developer that what is that we are looking for. But this does not mean that we should not give enough information in the story. So when you're writing the story, write the full detailed information in the story. At the same time, you write full detailed acceptance criteria also. So that way, it is the best practices to be followed for agile methodology, and it will help everyone to meet the required objective. So that's about user story and acceptance criteria. I hope this video is helpful for you all to understand user story and acceptance criteria. If you have any doubt, any question, or if you want something to add in the video from your side, you can put that in the comment section, and will be definitely happy to help and happy to answer wherever it's needed. So thank you so much for watching the video. My contact details are given here. My phone number, YouTube channel details are there, and then Instagram and Facebook page. All the links are also given in the description of the video. Please take a look. Please subscribe to channel. Please like the Instagram and Facebook pages. And thank you so much for watching.